Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for your patience as we deal with our technology here. Do our best to come out to you for a Shabbat Shalom and a song before we start.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We are having some slight technical difficulties. I think we're going to overcome them here in just a moment. But please watch our comments. There might be new instructions there for everybody. We are coming to you from our beautiful sanctuary. As always, you can find a link to the prayer book pages for this service in the comments, and other important information will also appear in the comments during the service. And for that, we thank our digital docents for managing the streaming for us tonight. Please say hi if you're watching by typing Shabbat Shalom in the comments line, and don't forget to hit return. For immediate technological help, please call or text CBT Technical Assistant Line TAL at 913-303-1134. If you have feedback about tonight's service, we suggest that you take notes and send us an email next week with your comments, and we thank you in advance. And Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Our service will continue now as we together light the Shabbat candles. They are on page 10, which is the second page in your package. If you have the candles ready at home, please light them.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
On page 22, we continue together with Lecha Dodi. We will be singing all the stanzas on that page. La 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 Lecha Dodi, ya la 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 Lecha Kana, ya la 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 B'nei Shabbat, B'nei Shabbat Ekavet.
עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמונה עם סגולה.
We continue together in the middle of page 29. Holy is the twilight, the realm of in-between. And so our sages taught, pray in the moments when light and darkness touch. We are all twilight people beyond categories and labels. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, widen our vision. Let it illumine our way to the God who transcends all boundaries and definitions. Blessed are you, God of all, who brings on the twilight. We continue together on page 35, the Ve'ahavta for Elul. You shall love the ones who are close with all your heart, with all your spirit, and with all your strength. Remember these words, inscribe them on your heart. Love them when they struggle, when they sadden and disappoint you. Love them when they fail. See the good within them, even when they can't. Look at them and listen, even when it's hard. Be grateful for this guidance, even their reproof, when they save you from yourself. Love them when they give you joy, and love them when they don't. When you lie down, let go of anger. When you rise up at dawn, begin again. Praise them for their deeds at home. Speak of them in public with respect. Bind yourself to the ones you love with promises kept and vows fulfilled. Open to them the gates of your heart, the doorway of your soul. Let them know you. So shall the ones you cherish feel your love, your presence, and your care. Together on page 40, we join in the words of Mi Chamocha in the middle of the page.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, dorot eilot osei peleh, baruchu techa, ahuvatecha, uchiya yamim b'Moshe u'Miriam,
We join together in the middle of page 42. Bless our sleep with peace, Adonai, and awaken us to life when we rise. With power sublime, spread over us your shelter of shalom. and through your wisdom restore us, make us whole. Let your name proclaim your presence in our lives and be our shield. Make us stronger than the enemies we face, illness and war, famine and sorrow, and stronger than the enemies in our hearts, wickedness and sin. Carry us to safety on wings, as you are the monarch of grace, sovereign of compassion. You are the one who cares for us and set us free. Watch over us. We go forth to life. Watch over us, that we may come home in peace, now till the end. This moment in our service, we take time, each one of us, to pray silently through the Amidah, the Tefillah. The standing prayer begins on page 48, and it goes all the way through page 74. It's an opportunity for us to begin together and then share this moment in silence, in meditation. You can go through the traditional prayers or offer a prayer from your own hearts. We'll begin together with Adonai Sefatai on page 48.
Adonai Sefatai Tivtach Ufi Agi Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Shalom Rama Israel Tasi Leolam. Shalom Rama Israel Tasi Leolam. Tasi Leolam. Tasi
We continue on page 77. At this moment, we're going to have an opportunity to offer names for those in need of healing. You may have access to our Mishe Berach list through the e-news that you received this morning, and also follow the link in the comments below. If you would like to offer names, please do so by typing their names in the comments. Just go ahead and type. As we offer a prayer for those in need of healing, we also think of those who help in healing, especially first responders and health workers all over our world during this pandemic. May the one who blessed and led our forebears give countenance unto those who provide help for the ill and troubled among us. May they be filled with fortitude and courage, endowed with sympathy and compassion, as they give strength to those at their side. May they fight against despair and continue to find within themselves the will to reach out to those in need. And in their love of others, may they feel the blessing of community and the blessing of renewed faith. It is now time for our Simcha moment. And if you are so moved, we invite you to share a special Simcha, a joy from this past week, which may include your birthday, anniversary, good news, and accomplishments of all and any kind. And you do that by typing it in the comment line. Just use a few words and then click enter. And for today, on the 19th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of 9/11, I'm going to share with all of you, with us together here, a poem. You might have seen this before. It's been around for 19 years. It was published first time in English in a translation by Claire Kavanagh in the September 24th issue of The New Yorker. It's a poem written by Adam Zagajewski, who's a very famous Polish poet. And the poem, it's called Try to Praise the Mutilated World.
Oof, wow.
Try to praise the mutilated world. Remember June's long days and wild strawberries, drops of wine, the dew, the nettles that methodically overgrow the abandoned homesteads of exiles. You must praise the mutilated world. You watched the stylish yachts and ships. One of them had a long trip ahead of it, while salty oblivion awaited others. You've seen the refugees heading nowhere. You've heard the executioners sing joyfully. You should praise the mutilated world. Remember the moments when we were together in a white room and the curtain fluttered. Return in thought to the concert where music flared. You gather acorns in the park in autumn, and leaves eddied over the earth's scars. Praise the mutilated world, and the gray feather of thrush lost, and the gentle light that strays and vanishes and returns. We now gather all the simchas that you have shared with us this evening. We offer a prayer. Divine source of blessings, we thank you for everything that enriches our lives. We turn to you now with gratitude as we share in the happiness of those who have marked their birthday anniversaries, good news and accomplishments. Adonai, be with them now and always. May they be blessed with health and happiness and with the strength to overcome sickness and sorrow. And as we honor each one of you for the gifts that you bring to our sacred community, we join together in song as we mark this sacred occasion.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו בזמן הזה. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו בזמן הזה.
On this Shabbat, we have a very special guest that is going to join us virtually, and this is the wonderful thing about the streaming piece. You know, it is different than being in person, but it gives us all these extra opportunities.
Yeah.
And we are very thankful that our founding rabbi, Mark Levine, is going to join us through, he's not very far away, but still, he's safe at home, and he's able to join all of us and share a Shabbat message with us today. So I'm going to turn it over and welcome Rabbi Levine to our streaming and to our Shabbat celebration.
Shabbat Shalom. Great to see you. Great to be with you. More or less in person, right? So I'm grateful to Rabbi Kanapan for this opportunity to give a sermon, and right before the high holidays as we begin this new year, prepare to begin a new year. So we're culminating the reading of the Torah, and we're in the last couple of parashiot, the last couple of portions, and about the last 5 chapters of the book of Deuteronomy. This is the most neglected book in the Torah because it's read during the summer. And at least in previous years, people would go away on vacation, and very few people would ever get the opportunity to read most of the book of Deuteronomy. In this particular parashah that we read this week, we see the first time that it's mentioned that all of us should read Torah in a period, in a cycle. We should take out the Torah and we should read the Torah. We don't know exactly the book that they had at the time of Deuteronomy, but what it says is, very unusually, you should read the whole book every 7 years, once every 7 years. So over the time, this obviously has developed. And this covenantal Torah reading over the last couple of thousand years has become the hallmark of Judaism. I mean, I just found out that I was muted, and I have no idea if I'm supposed to begin again. I'm just going to start right back in. So we're talking about the reading of the Torah and the fact that Torah reading became a covenantal part of Judaism. And over the last couple of thousand years, it's become the case that Torah reading has been associated as sort of the hallmark of what Jewish worship is about. I think most people, when they think about a movie, which includes Jewish worship, it's either a wedding and a kippah, stamping on the glass, or it's the reading of Torah. So Torah study perpetuates the stories of the Bible in our lives. We Jews are called the people of the book. And what we believe, what we espouse, and really our conduct has been conducted because we've studied these stories. For instance, on Yom Kippur, you're going to read, therefore choose life, that you and your children shall live. Choosing life is a big mitzvah that all of us are accustomed to, but it's in part because we read it on Yom Kippur. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your strength, with all your being. We recite those words daily. Justice, justice shall you pursue was just a couple of weeks ago in this Torah portion. And the ideal of justice is, in fact, central to what we believe as Judaism. Perhaps you don't consciously think of it, but it's a biblical ideal to pursue justice. And so when you bring, for instance, at the High Holy Days, bags and bags of food, right? What are you pursuing? You may not associate it with Torah, but somewhere in the recesses of your mind is this ideal of justice, okay, which you've heard in the Torah reading every year. Now, there's a Bible story that you may not be familiar with entirely, one that you don't necessarily know so well, about how Saul, the first of the kings of Israel, actually became king. I'm going to read this story to you. Please bear with me. The Bible says in 1 Samuel, so Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking for a king. He said, these will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and he will appoint them to his chariots and to his horsemen and to run in front of his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s and commanders of 10s, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest and to make the implements of war and the equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and your vineyards and your olive orchards, and he will give them to his own servants. He will take the tenth of your grain and of your vineyards, give them to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants and your female servants, and the best of your young men and your donkeys, and you will put all of them to work. He will take the tenth of your flock, and they shall be his slaves. In that day you will cry out because of the king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you on that day. But the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. He told them all these things that were going to be wrong about having a king. But the people said, no, let there be a king over us, that we will also be like, and get this, that we should also be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. When Samuel heard all these words from the people, he repeated them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, obey their voice, give them a king. Samuel then said to the men of Israel, go every man to his city. So the Bible is explaining to us in this story that God and Samuel preferred that God alone reign over Israel, but the people demanded to be like the nations round about. So the Torah commands not to appoint a king, whereas all the surrounding nations bowed to a king who ruled their lives. So listen to the biblical passage in the book of Deuteronomy, the same book that we're reading. When you come to the land which the Lord your God gives you, and you possess it, you shall dwell there, and you will say, I'll set a king over me like all the nations that are round about me. If you set a king over you, whom the Lord your God shall choose, one of them from your brethren you shall set over you. In other words, another Israelite. You may not put a foreigner over yourselves, who is not your brother. Only he shall not multiply horses to himself. Get that? He can't multiply. He can't do exactly what Samuel said he was going to do. Can't have a lot of horses. Neither shall he multiply wives for himself, that his heart will not be turned away. Neither shall he multiply to himself silver and gold. And it shall be when he sits upon the throne of his kingdom, now this is the crux of the matter, when he sits upon his throne of the kingdom, that he shall write himself a copy of the book of law, this very book, out of that which is before the priests and the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read in it every day of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord your God, to keep all the words of this law, and to keep all these statutes, that his heart not be lifted up above his brethren, and that he not turn aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, to the end that he may prolong his days in the kingdom and his children in the midst of Israel. So the book of Deuteronomy says, what? If you're going to have a king, here are the rules he has to obey. The Torah forbade choosing or appointing a king for Israel because God was to be sovereign over all the people. But the people, when they demanded a king, God said, okay, go ahead. So the king, through the prophet Samuel, appointed a king over all the people. But what would a king do to them? God has told them, don't let them do this stuff. But they demanded a king anyway. So here's the kicker. God said, fine, let them have a king, but I'm still going to be their sovereign. Unlike any other country round about where they had kings, the king, and we just saw it in Deuteronomy, has to write with his own hand his own Torah scroll, and he has to read in it every single day. Many centuries later, many centuries later, Maimonides, who codified Jewish law, comments on this, and it shall be when the king sits upon the throne of his kingdom, he shall write himself a copy of the Torah. Maimonides says about this, a Jewish king is required to write or acquire for himself a Sefer Torah, his own, from which he does not depart all the days of his reign. This scroll is in addition to the scroll that every Jew was supposed to write for himself. So the king now has to have two Torah scrolls, both of which he wrote and which he's going to read in daily. So just to keep him honest, the very next commandment in Maimonides lists that every person writes a scroll so the people know what the king is supposed to know as well. Every male is to acquire a complete Torah scroll for himself according to traditional Jewish law. Better yet, if he can write one himself, he's considered to have received the Torah from Sinai. One cannot suffice with a Torah scroll that he inherits from his ancestors, that he somehow gets from someone else. Rather, you have to acquire it for yourself. That's how central Torah reading became to the Jewish people. Now, you're going to say to me, if we were together, now you're going to say to me, I can't write my own scroll. I don't have the skill. I don't have the time. But the fact is that many of the members of our congregation of Beth Torah, just 5 years ago, at the 25th anniversary of the congregation, did in fact write a Torah scroll. If you were one of the people that filled in one or more letters of the Torah, then you wrote a Torah scroll for yourself. That's why we completed that Torah scroll, which is now the primary Torah scroll in the reading of the Torah for Beth Torah. So what is the meaning of all this? There was a time when I used to be asked this question, Rabbi, If there were a war, God forbid, if there were a war between Israel and the United States, Rabbi, which side would you choose? Those people thought that they were, right, getting me. Very difficult question. But my answer was absolutely always the same. My answer would be, I'll choose the side of God. So what does that mean? I don't support a particular government. I've supported the government of the United States. I've supported the government of Israel. I support those entities when they are in the right, when they are doing what is righteous. But political support is not the same as principle. On what do I base my convictions? On what do I base my support for the governments of the United States or even the government of Israel, where I'm certainly not a citizen? Where do my underlying commitments come from? I have allegiance only to God. Like the king of Israel in this commandment in the Torah, I read Torah every day. And all of us are commanded to have a Torah scroll. Why? Because it is Torah that is developed as the foundation of our values over these last 3,000 years. To what purpose do we read in the Torah? Well, to guide our actions. And that's the upshot of the Torah portion, Vayelech, which we read this week. Our allegiance is to a God of justice, to a God of love, to a God of community, to a God of Jewish history. No earthly government deserves our allegiance when they choose an unethical path. God is supreme in Jewish lives, and we express that from the commandment that we read this week to read Torah, because the world is that complex that we need to have principles by which we live our lives. But you say, fine. So the king 2,500 years ago, 2,700 years ago, was commanded to write this Torah scroll. What does that have to do with me today? So much has developed since then. How in the world can moderns make decisions based on laws that are 2,500 or even 3,000 years old? Well, the answer is simple. The Torah this week commands all people to gather. All the men, the women, the children, all the occupations, all the social positions, all the different economic positions of the household of Israel, for all of them to gather together in one place. Those people are not only supposed to hear Torah, they're supposed to also express themselves. The Jewish people were the first universally literate people in the world. We are the people of the book. We believe in education. We rely upon that education, the discussion of the principles by which we live, the application of that knowledge to the real world. That's the role of Midrash, stories, Jewish stories, and of Jewish law. Opinions go to the scholars, and the scholars, listening to people's real world problems and solutions, create new knowledge and new opinions. So the Torah develops and has developed over the last 2,500 years. So you see, the leader, in the case of the Bible, the king, but every leader is to have a Torah scroll so familiar to him or to her that he or she wrote it down for themselves and study it daily. This week's Torah portion sets in motion the bedrock of Judaism. Foundational principles repeated over and over again. They're adhered to by the leaders of the people. They're debated constantly, with new applications constantly developing, resting on the foundation stones of these eternal principles. We all know the Torah commands, you shall not murder, but is abortion murder? You all know that the Torah says you shall not gossip, but is sharing information about a professional in your life or someone that you know. Is that gossip or is that necessary information? You must give tzedakah, we learn, an eternal principle. But how much is enough? You must honor your father and your mother and revere your mother and your father. But what about nursing homes and expensive illnesses and poverty? How do we apply those laws to our own day? Old laws, new understandings, new solutions. But the rulers of the people, at least among Jews, are to be guided by Torah. Most important, then, the king writes his own Torah scroll. He makes sure that he knows all the laws and adheres to them. The king retains courts of advisors to be certain that God, not the king, sets the principles of justice for all. As these high holy days approach, may we, who are the recipients of Torah, demand the Torah rule of justice equally applied to all, according to God's eternal principles, and let that be the standard of our lives. Let that be the standard of our nation. Ken Yehi Ratzon, Shabbat Shalom, L'Shana Tova.
שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם, בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. לחזות בנועם, בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש.
As we prepare for our moment of remembrance, we take some time to think about the events of September 11, 2001. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and coming, now and forever.
שיר למעלות, אשא עיני אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ, הייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שמרך, הנה לא ימות ולא יישן שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. אדוני ישמורך מכל רע. ישמור את נפשך, אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם.
Creator of all, source and shelter, grant a perfect rest under your tabernacle of peace to all those who died during the 9/11 attacks on the United States. Remember the works of their hands and the message of their heart. Adonai, remember all those who were lost in the terror of that day. Grant their families peace and comfort for your name's sake and for the sake of all those who perished. Bring an end to violence and terror speedily in our days. May the memory of those who perished be sanctified with joy and love. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, a living blessing in our midst. At this moment, we remember with sorrow those who perished during the tragic events of September the 11th, 2001, and also our own loved ones whom death has recently taken from us. We are observing the Shloshim period for Eugene Horwitz, husband of Sue Horwitz. And on this Shabbat, we mark the following yortzites of members of our congregation. We remember Lois Beaupede, Albert Byler, Elizabeth Blum, Mark Brown, Robert Chase, Ann Zarlinski, Frida Davidson, Harry Dubrov, Judy K. Epstein, Bessie Karch, Nancy Kessler, Rosemary Peterson Adams, Mary Rosen, Jimmy Taylor. If you're joining us on this Shabbat and I remember in a loved one, we invite you to type their names on the comments and click enter. The memories of all of them are with us. Zichronam livracha. May the memories be forever a blessing in our lives. On page 86, together we join in Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Itgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, be'alema divra chirute ve'yamlich malchute, bechayechon u'vyamechon, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר, ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דע אמירם בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. Before we depart and conclude our time together on this Shabbat, we have some announcements. We would like to thank everyone who has joined us from our area and from around the world. We have special thanks to our founding Rabbi Mark Levine for his compelling message for this Shabbat, and also to Joel Krishover and Leslie Zucker, who have joined us this evening, and we thank them for the lovely music making. And also to our team of digital docents who were working double duty this evening at the beginning of the service. I know the phone, the towel line was going off the hook. It's ringing off the hook. We thank them for managing our comments and our streaming. We will be back here tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for our morning service on Facebook Live. Just a reminder that our building is now open, but you must have an appointment with a member of our staff in order to be let into the building. And I can tell you, next week, the 4 days before Rosh Hashanah, you may not want to call us.
No, stay away.
You like
Just
to call us
stay
about
away.
things about high holidays. We are ready to go. But other things, you may want to wait a few days. We are here for you, but we'll be here for you more after
That's
Yom
right.
Kippur, probably. If you would like to join us for Torah study, our Sichat Shabbat will begin tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on Zoom. Please see the event on Facebook. And also, please join us tomorrow night at 8:45 for our community Slichot service. This service, and this is very important, will not, I repeat, will not be streamed on Facebook Live, but through our website. The stream will be password protected, and the link to watch and the password for the stream were in the e-news you received this morning. So please look for it, find that email. It goes very early in the morning, about 6 in the morning.
And I'll give you a little hint also about that particular stream.
Please.
On our virtual sanctuary. It will not ask you for a password until it is time for that particular service. So if you were to go in and click it, say, after the service is over, it's not going to ask you for your password. It will not ask you for the password until it is time for the Slichot service to start. Okay, just really important to remember that. Our next song session is the 16th. And then we do have one more Thursday conversation coming up. This coming Thursday, we're going to do a behind-the-scenes CB Tech edition. Dave and I will be moderating a conversation so you can come ask your questions about why we're doing what we're doing and why we've made our choices, and also meet a couple of our digital docents. So we hope to see you there on the Zoom. The link was in your e-news.
Yeah, we haven't figured out a way to show faces on Facebook Live from their computers. They are usually at home working the comments and all that, so we don't get to see them, so you get to meet them as well. Please check us out on Facebook, like our page, and leave us a comment about the service and other virtual events. Have a Shabbat Shalom, and please stay healthy. We will conclude as we join together in Olam Chesed Ibaneh. It's on page 90.
Olam Chesed
And on this last Shabbat of the year, the last Shabbat of Elul, we have a special guest that visits us on these days. Summon the energy to sound the horn, muster the strength to change, move from judgment to compassion, shift your perspective and heal. Be the first to apologize, offer the hand of forgiveness, open your heart to hear the horn, believe in your power to change. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea teruah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who hears the sounding of the shofar. Tekiah, shvarim teruah. Tekiah. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Take care of each other out there. Mwah.